Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What Makes You Tick. We're in a new environment here in the Collaborative Studios, and great to be here. This is the first time we've recorded, and I am delighted to welcome my new guest, well, old guest and new guest. Be great to catch up, Greg McWilliams. Good to have you on board, pal.
Thanks so much for being on board. It's good to see you. Just catching
Yeah,
up.
it's nice.
Being in a similar space, it's nice to have a look around and see
what's out there.
Yeah, it's very good. Very.
You've been doing a hell of a lot, buddy, since I last spoke to you. Like the last time we caught up, I know we've been back and forth in texts and stuff, and you've been through a hell of a journey, and I thought it would be good to bring you back on board because number one, just to see how you're doing, but number two, just to kind of get a sense of what you've been through. You've recently become a high performance coach. You've set up into broadcast. You're created your own new podcast called All Walks, and you've jumped into that world. But first and foremost, how have you been doing? How's life?
Life is challenging.
Yeah.
You alluded to it, but we had a chance to catch up while we were in America. Myself, my wife Sarah were living over there, and we decided it was time to come back to Ireland. You come back to Ireland, and work doesn't go very well. I took a role when I came back to Ireland, and you're hoping for it to go well, and it goes the opposite of well. And that's always hard because you want to do the best you can. And I suppose dealing with that and dealing with Sarah, who's still, health-wise has been a challenge. But at the same time, I mean, everyone goes through problems. And I think the key thing for us is, look, this is just our battle. Everyone goes through it. Everyone has their own problems, and we just try and do our best to try and make the most of it. And but it has been a challenge. Yeah.
How are you feeling like as a result? Because we can talk about those elements later on in a bit of detail, but like in terms of energy and stuff, are you tired, or are you excited about what's coming down the line, or where's your head at?
I know I'm definitely excited about what's coming down the line. We're in a good place. I'm looking forward to continuing doing what I'm doing, which is the All Walks podcast. Similar to yourself, it's an opportunity just to talk to great people who all have good stories to tell, and you can share that with others.
Yeah.
And they're inspirational. They really are. It can be what can be perceived as the most ordinary person, but what they've gone through or what they battle on a daily basis, or how they've used their skills to create a great career for themselves. It's great to just be in their company and listen to them. So I love that. And I'm helping out with the Queens in Dalkey, looking after a venue above the Queens called the Biker Rooms. And that's really interesting because I suppose through Sarah as well, we have a passion for music and comedy, and we get a chance to bring some good musicians into the room. We had Mundy there a couple of weeks ago that rocked the place. It was great. And we've had Reg D. Hunter in.
I went to see him a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Out in was it in Dalkey or out in Dunleary?
Yeah,
and
one of them.
Jesus, he's priceless.
He was brilliant, yeah. And it's lovely to be involved in that and events, and I'm really enjoying that. And then I'm going to be going back teaching and rugby coaching, because it is your passion. For 26 years I'd studied and worked with teams from schools to colleges to international men's, international women's, professional men's. And you get a really wide range of the different, I suppose, requirements for the roles. And then you get to the stage where you probably have your biggest role, and it probably is the worst in terms of outright performance, and you have to live with that. And you lose your soul in coaching. And I think I needed time to rediscover what my purpose is, and it's definitely working with people and just seeing people grow and develop and improve, and you see them turn into great people. That's definitely something that's always attracted me back to coaching.
When you say you lose your soul in coaching, like what do you mean by that?
It's very hard when I'd like to think that anybody who has a role, particularly it's in the public eye, that you're trying to do the best for the country. So, being the head coach of the Irish women's rugby team, I took over after they failed to qualify for the Rugby World Cup, and you think, look, it's a great opportunity, and it's still, I always look at it as a great opportunity. You get an opportunity to coach your country. But what you want to do with that responsibility is to create a brilliant winning team and give people a sense of excitement, a sense of hope, a sense of enjoyment to watch your team play. And for that brief moment in time, you've had a chance to take over the mantle and it doesn't go the way you want it to go, it's very hard to all of a sudden just jump straight into something else.
Yeah.
I'd been with the Irish women's team before when they were successful. So you nearly take it for granted that you can go in again, even though I was away from Ireland for nearly 7 years. I didn't realise the dynamic had changed a little bit.
What was the biggest change in terms of the dynamic? Because there was a lot of controversy going on at the time within the IRFU and the Irish women's team and how they've been treated and all that. And then when you came in, then there was kind of like a new, fresh blood, kind of new way of thinking. And like, I must say, when I saw you go on to take that role, I was excited for you. I was like, the best man has the job, you know, or the best person, sorry, has the job. And I always felt that you needed time, more time. I always felt that there was a hell of a lot of psychological rebuilding to be done, but then also then the balance between the 7s and the 15s to try and find a kind of like a way to make that work. When you had 7s players, you were a different team. When you didn't have 7s players, there was challenges, right? But how was that dynamic very different from what you had experienced before?
Maybe when I was experiencing it before, the world hadn't moved on to professional sports. And it's great to see the growth of professional women's sports. Terrific. And the global game of rugby had moved on, the women's game. But to be really clear, I mean, I came into the RFU and I must say, you might get a view of what's happening from the outside in, but from the inside out, I was blown away by just having a recce the place before I took the job to see how the machine was working. And it was, you know, you're looking at chefs there providing the players of food every day, top of the range facilities to train, top of the range gym, great staff, and really hungry players that want to, like I talked about earlier on, they want to do special things and they want to give people a lift. So everything was there. And, you know, that's the funny thing. I don't look at anything, whether it's 7s players or whether you're getting more money or how many professionals you have. I don't look at any of that, and I look back at my time at the IRFU. It's funny, I don't have any complaints. There's things I would definitely have done differently, but the IRFU were very supportive. I mean, everything that we asked for, we got. I had a great staff around me, and players that were developing. They're at a stage in their development that they were lacking in experience versus the players they were playing in the Six Nations. So you're going from playing AIL, you know, where you mightn't have a big crowd on a Saturday. Let's say, for example, the Belvedere team are playing in Cork. Yeah. And then maybe a week later or 2 weeks later, they're playing in front of, 14,000 people. But most importantly, it's on TV and, you know, you're not used to all of this pressure. And they're going to get better. And I thought, like, that's the thing as well, is they have probably a better man for the job. You know, if you look at it analytically, he's coached with England for, 8 years, one of the best teams in the world. He's seen it before. He knows the women's game really well. Probably an opportunity for him to do the role because the English coaching staff had moved on. And something you live with. You know, it's still hard to take because it would have been my biggest role in one way. And it was the role that probably went the worst in terms of results, and I suppose when you're younger, you always want it there and then. You want why am I getting that job? You're 25 years of age as a coach and you're like, I can do that job. But then you get to a certain age and you've got more experience. It's amazing then how that impacts your role and how you perceive everything from all those learnings you've had in the past. And yeah, you just look at analytically and realize I probably would have done things differently. And I'd love to go back and redo it, but you can't. But they're going to develop because, like I talked about, they're getting more experiences. They're getting more touches. They're getting more strength and conditioning. They're getting more cognitive skill development. They're getting more autonomous skill understanding and decision making. That it's going to take time, but in a couple of years, the Irish team, I believe, are going to be one of the best in the world.
And how did you manage the news? Like when you found out that it was time, like what was your initial reaction?
Oh, look, it was actually very amicable. That's the thing. I have a good relationship, still do, with Gillian, who was the person who's involved in the decision, I'm sure, with other people in the RFU, and it was a business decision, and it was very amicable. you know, again, they probably want to go in a different direction. Well, they did want to go in a different direction. And I felt that I wasn't maybe the right person to take this group of players forward. You know, you have to be the right mix for something. Like there might be somebody listening to this who's in a variety of different professions, could be an accountant, and they start a job, they're doing their best, it's just not clicking.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be because of you and how you're delivering your output of work, or it could be you don't fit in the environment, or the group could be better in a different way. And it's easy for people just to shift maybe gears and move from company to company. But when you're the Irish team coach and
Mm-hmm.
you're expected to win and you're losing, you know, it's hard to live with that, because you want the complete opposite.
Of course, yeah.
You know, and the players deserve the complete opposite, because they give so much to get better, and the staff gave so much, and, you know, internally they just gave so much to the cause, and it was just hard seeing them not get the reward. But that reward, I believe, will come, as I said. And you saw that already last year. Six Nations.
You can see it, and I think when you get that sense of victory, or when you start winning, then there changes a kind of a mood in the camp altogether.
Yeah, momentum is huge, and sometimes in any environment, you know, positive momentum is great, but negative momentum is really hard to turn.
Very hard.
As I said to you, there's things I would love to have done differently to go back on it, because you learn so much from things you could have done as a dynamic with a group, and in terms of leadership group, in terms of, I suppose, giving the players maybe more ownership in certain parts and then less ownership in other parts. And I enjoy that part of teaching and coaching, and that's probably where I look at how it could have developed and changed, was creating, I think, a better environment.
Yeah, and I do, like, it doesn't define you either, right? Because if you have learnings from it, then you're only going to get better as well. I think in any of those kind of walks, when you go through that kind of challenge, did it take you a while to pick yourself up? Like, what was the process that you went through to kind of get a sense of, okay, here we go again, I'm hungry again, or did that happen straight away?
Oh, geez, I thought we were just here for a catch up. I didn't realize I'd be going into this.
Well, you don't have to.
No, look, I think after that happened, I struggled because of, in my eyes, the failure of it. Mm-hmm. I really believed that looking at the players that were there and looking at their performances, I thought in a short space of time we could make big changes. And then you get into the nuances of the women's game, and you're looking at some really good teams that have really good cognitive development. I keep mentioning that word, but their motor skills they have a rhythm and they have a cadence, and their footwork is really sharp. So they're all those things that players develop when they're in a full-time environment. And again, you can see that in their performance. You can see the likes of Aoife Wafer now, a player who's got a step in power, and what that does for the players around, opening holes and gives you that momentum forward. And there's a good few of those players, but the more you're in that professional environment, the better those movements come that can help the overall picture of how you're trying to play. And in the women's game, you're seeing teams and players that are just developing all the time. I mean, the standard is really good. The fitness constraints are really good. I remember coming into the role, and the average ball in play in the global game was in around 33 and a half minutes. You know, some men's games you can get up to 40 plus. But you can also get some URC games that might be down in the late 20s. So the whole idea was to create a training program where your players would be comfortable training at worst case scenarios of the game. So you try and periodize your plan to make sure that you're allowing your players to get to the trenches they need to get to, but be able to at speed, repeatability. So they got to use their mind, and they got to be conditioned to do so. And that was, for me, that was the most enjoyable part of the process. Ed Slattery, who's the head of S&C in there, and Nick Winkleman, you know, putting together a plan that would allow the players to be able to do that. So myself and John McKee and Niamh Briggs and Dennis Fogarty and any other coaching staff that came in, you know, I'd be relying on Ed to tell me, you know, because every player is GPS monitored, you know, did we reach our targets? Did we get enough high-speed running meters? And, you know, because as a coach, you don't want to talk a lot. You need to do your planning beforehand. You need to just let a session go as much as you can and talk as little as you can, which just prompt you some points, some key points that might just direct them a little bit.
Yeah.
And that part of the process, and then we brought in nutritionists to try and improve how they're fueling their body. I mean, all that stuff is great. I think when I started with the IRFU, with the senior side, I could have been maybe one of the only full-time employees. And by the time I left, I'm going to say we had 14.
Okay.
Who all came in and had this group behind the player. And that's why I think the IRFU, they've set up some great, like, look, people might say they could have done it sooner, but I didn't notice that. I came into a group that were really keen on taking the women's game forward. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, okay, listen, let's park that now. And let's look at, you spoke about comedy and music being a very key point in your life, right?
Yeah. I don't know where this is going.
Yeah, no. Well, listen, it's yeah. Like, if anybody who knows you and follows you, yourself and Sarah, like, you have some crack on your social media, between you with Ricky Gervais and The Office, and even there's a song that you guys have that you've sung a couple of times. Where did the love for that come from? And like, comedy is something that you either have it or you don't. And believe me, I've been slagged so many times about my poor sense of comedy. It's like there's dad's jokes and then there's Brad's jokes. It's so bad. Okay. But how did that kind of become a part of your kind of DNA?
Well, I'm telling you now, I'm not a comedian. I'm somebody who just honestly, I'm sure like this is a real cliche, but I do enjoy company. I enjoy people's company. And I find that you can bring out the best in people by just having the crack and allowing them hopefully be themselves. I think when you're in an environment where they're having a drink, or you're going for dinner, or you're going meeting somebody for coffee, if you go in there just to chat and catch up, and whether they're looking for advice or whether they just want to shoot the shit, if you're there with no real purpose, it kind of makes it really nice.
Yeah.
And look, obviously myself and Sarah were married 18 years yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
18 years. Crazy.
Wow.
Mad.
That's been a lot that is 18 years.
That is, yeah. Look, a lot of brilliant things, but you know, she's a great person. Her family are all involved in music. I loved music growing up, but I never took myself too seriously. So when I was learning guitar, I wasn't learning to play my own stuff. I was learning for it. So if I was at the afters of a wedding at 1:30 in the morning, I can take a guitar out and I can play a few tunes, and other people can sing and I can sing with them.
Yeah.
I never learned the guitar to, you know, to write songs. I learned it so that if I was on a bus on the way back, you know, with a rugby team, that with the guitar there, I'd be able to bang out a few tunes. Sarah's the same. You know, Sarah loves music. Our kids enjoy music. We got twins that are 6, and they're always messing around on the piano or messing around on a bongo, whatever it is. I think it's just a big part of our life.
It's priceless to see you sometimes, and the way yourself and Sarah interact. Like, it's just brilliant. And if anybody does, for Sarah's friends who do follow her, like, there's some great videos of her scaring you.
Yeah, a lot of them are private. A lot of them, she has close friends, and they're the ones now that
get to see it.
Yeah,
but she's very honest, and
she keeps you honest. Jesus,
but she's very honest in what she shares as well. And I think it allows us to kind of reach out and to stay connected. Considering so you guys you're 18 years together, right?
Yeah,
you've been pretty much, you've done everything now at this stage. I remember when we first met. I think it was about was it about 12 years ago now? I'd say.
Oh yeah, about that.
Could have been, about that. Christ. It was about 12 years ago now. And when we first met, we'd go to Halloween parties together and have the crack. But
not specifically Halloween parties. Like, we didn't go around.
No, we didn't actually go running after Halloween parties. But I remember
one Halloween party.
In
your apartment, I think. Was it your apartment?
Why? What do you remember?
I just remember being dressed.
Fred Flintstone.
And I just remember being good fun.
We great crack. But with you guys going to America, what was the kind of the reason behind that? Was it always a case that you wanted to up sticks, because at that time the kids weren't around, right? So you guys, or was it job opportunities, or? Yeah,
it's a bit of everything. You know, Sarah had been to America before. I traveled a fair bit with work. We got an offer to go to Yale University, which is a really good, university, considered one of the best in the world. And I was teaching in a school, and I love the idea of going in somewhere where you're dealing with like really smart kids, really smart, well-known institution. I just thought, what an opportunity to meet these really talented kids. And there were so many. I mean, they were so impressive, the kids that went through there. So the idea of going away was something at the time. We didn't have kids. that we felt is a really good opportunity. And the plan was to originally go for 1 year, and we ended up staying for over 7, because you get over there and you start a role. And, you know, I know America can be portrayed in certain ways on the TV, but certainly where we were, like, they're just brilliant people.
Yeah.
Really good to be around. And it was just the right time to move back home. But yeah, the plan was to head over to America for a year, and we ended up then staying for 7 and having a great time.
Yeah. And then what was it like coming back? Because, like, the perception of being away versus being away, but also you guys were going through enough challenges through, obviously, Sarah being ill, and the kids were young and stuff. And there was, like, what has that journey been like since you've come back?
Look, it's always a big decision to come home. I was coaching a professional men's team as head coach in New York, and I'd just been with the national men's side, and I still associated with the university program, although Craig Wilson had come in, he was doing a phenomenal job. So essentially I was on the board, but I wasn't really connecting as much as I needed to. The program now is being run by somebody who's doing a phenomenal job. So with Sarah's health and with time, I suppose getting on, you feel that you need to get closer to home to your mum and your dad. And I'm delighted that we got a chance to come home when we did, because we lost my mum there quite recently. But it was just a chance to get back to the family, a chance for your kids to meet their cousins and meet their nephews and nieces and uncles and aunts and grandparents. It's the right time to do it. And, you know, you mentioned it, but, you know, Sarah got diagnosed with cancer in 2020, right at the start of COVID. So it meant that her family and my family had to be completely separate throughout the whole time. We had to lock into a house in America, which was really challenging for Sarah and for her family as well. I can only imagine now, being a dad, how hard it would be if I wasn't able to even visit my son or daughter if they're going through a challenge like that. So that was really hard. And then Sarah obviously went through chemotherapy, and I'm not here to talk about her health, but certainly people out there understand that cancer hits people very differently. And Sarah had a particular cancer that just, it takes a long time to heal. Like, the cancer is gone now, but, you know, you're effectively getting injected with poison, and it can have a reaction to people. And, you know, it's taken Sarah a while to get back to her being herself, and it's hard to see her going through that, to be honest.
Yeah.
The poor thing, she needs to catch a break. So you're just hoping that as time goes on and she gets better, that she gets back to being able to have the energy that she normally has. So
how is she now? How's her spirits?
She's incredibly strong. She's like, as you know yourself, you know her. She's
phenomenal.
Yeah, person. She's incredible. And her spirits are always high, but you just know she's going through you know, a tough time. She's just been in hospital there for you know, about 2 weeks with we had to go into hospital, and she ended up everything being okay, and she's making amend on that. But yeah, it's just a challenge. I said at the start that everybody has their own challenges. You know, we're grateful for so much, and I certainly don't want to come on here and kind of, I'm not looking for that sympathy card. It's just giving you the.
I know you never, and to be fair, you never do. But like you
feel privileged in certain aspects, you know.
Yeah,
you do feel privileged.
Anytime we've ever spoken and stuff, we've never gone like that. And I do think it's important, though, to your point. Everyone does go through challenges, and they're all relative, right? But it's what I think is impressive, though, is that some people, everyone reacts differently, right? But when you go through a challenge, you get a hit and you get up and you go again, and you still keep going. Like, it's brilliant to hear what you're doing with All Walks after the challenge that you've been through in terms of the previous job. It's also, considering losing your mum then as well, like that's been a huge challenge as well. So that's all kind of everything kind of probably came at a pretty condensed period of time. But now you're, as you say at the start, like you're hungry and you're excited about the future.
Yeah, of course.
What's happening. So
I think
don't let it. Sorry, what I'm trying to say is, don't negate because everyone has challenges that you can't. Like, don't take away from your challenges.
No, not. You know? Look, as I said to you, it's obviously, you know, for me, we know we're going through a tough challenge, but at the same time, you know, that's what family is for. That's what friends are for. We've had you know, there's great people around us, and, you know, thank God Sarah's doing great.
Yeah.
And every day, hopefully she can do better and better. and the twins are doing great. So
have the twins still got a bit of an American twang?
No, it's all gone. Although you get the odd sidewalk and trash, which kind of hits us a little bit.
How dare you?
How dare you? No, they're getting on great. They're born in America, in Florida, and it's something that we're really proud of. As I said to you, the American people were great, and they looked after us so well.
My sister lives in Philly and is loving life over there.
Yeah, they're
loving
great.
Life, yeah.
They're great. So we're always very proud of the fact that Lana Rose and Archer are born in America, and they have their American passports. And no, it's a great country, and we'll get back there whenever we can.
Tell me, when we talk about success, because one of the questions I always ask people when they come on is to define success, right? And what it means to you. And some people will have various versions of it. But if you were to try explain it in your own terms to a stranger, what would your definition of success be?
God, I think my perceived definition of success just changes the whole time. When you're younger, you might win something and you think that that's success, and then you go through multiple experiences, you gain an understanding of how you operate, what makes you tick, what you like, and you begin to then realize that successes aren't what you thought they were in the past, and you're still trying to work out what success is. I think you'll probably get a better answer of somebody who's, I don't know. That'd be for success. It's obviously about being a good dad first and foremost. And again, I heard people saying that before, and you don't really understand it until you're a dad and you realize you have to be a good dad. You got to mold your kids into being really good people, to be kind, to be nice, to be mannerly. They're all so important. So for me, if myself and Sarah are out and about and they're not mannerly, or they're not engaging with people, that would be a big one for us, that we'd be like, look, you got to be aware of other people and give them respect, and little things like that, where you mightn't be too concerned about other things other parents might find really important. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but you want your kids to be just good people.
We've one on the way in September.
Oh my God.
Well, in the next couple of weeks now.
So God, congratulations.
So to that point, I've never gotten to understand it until we're so close now.
Oh my God, it's I tell you, it's all change.
It is all change, and there's a lot of fear and trepidation. Will I be a good dad? Will we be good parents? All that stuff. But I'd love to be able to say at 18 or whatever that they want to have a pint with me. That's a kind of a goal of mine. That they're not fed up with me at that stage, that they actually enjoy hanging out with me, and that's something I've kind of set myself a little target of. But it's nerve-wracking, scary, all that stuff, but super exciting,
No,
and I can relate.
It's tough as well,
a little bit to what you're saying. Yeah,
there's going to be moments as well where you're like it's you go through challenges, right? It's not all rosy, but my God, you have some amazing times with them. And I suppose success number one is to, I think, rear your kids to be just really good people. I think that's got to be number one. I think number two, you got to give them support, financial support as best you can. And that's probably why, you're trying to find what's going to give my family the best financial support. And then you want to be a good person. You want to, care for people and respect people. I think if you do that, I think all the other things will come. But certainly for me is, I just enjoy interacting with people. And as long as I continuously do that and feel that I'm doing the right thing for my kids, and I mean, they're all the things that are successsul.
For me. And everybody has a different version of it,
But if you can do what you love doing, I've done jobs that I haven't loved doing. I've struggled in it, and I'm definitely a different person. That's me when I'm not at my best. You want to be able to go into an environment and be yourself. I'm not saying it was the Irish job. I'm saying just a particular job in the last kind of 10 years.
Yeah.
They're struggling because you're going in every day, you're fighting against having to be yourself, and you have to think about what you say, and you have to act a certain way, and that gets very tiring. And that I struggled in that environment.
Everybody would though.
Yeah.
But
lots of people do, that's the thing, that I think if you can do what you love and you're in a good environment, I think there's nothing better. I think that's essentially for me.
It's funny. I was in a conversation with somebody recently, and we're just talking about jobs and work and all that, and a lot of it was waiting for something to be handed down from their boss to them, right? Instead of actually going after it and asking and saying, I would like this, or how can I get this? What are the steps I need to take in order to get a bonus, to get a rise, get a promotion, whatever? They were just waiting for somebody to hand it to them, right? And it was very much the teacher school pupil kind of thing of old. And I think a lot of people kind of fall into that trap, though, of not having the confidence or being in the environments to be okay to ask, or not to be afraid to ask, or not to be afraid to be themselves.
Yeah.
How do you kind of create an environment that allows you to be yourself? Is it simply just do as I do, not what I say type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, 2 points on that. The first one is, when I had a bit of time, when I'd left my last job, and you're trying to take a bit of time to find out, where do I want to go here? You've got one life. Is this the path you want to be on? When you're in elite level sport, it's incredibly time consuming. It's incredibly good fun, but you take so much time away from your family. You miss so many events. You're away all the time, and it's just not what I wanted to do anymore. So I think relating to the environment, I don't really know what relevant that last point was, but certainly relating to an environment, the idea is that you have an emotional connection to whatever it is that you do. And this is all in my opinion. I'm no expert.
Yeah.
But if you can develop an emotional connection between individuals and the collective group, that goes a massive way for any organization to be successful. And you can develop that by really caring for your players. So not just know them as players, but understand their family, understand where they came from, their extracurricular activity, who are they friends with in the team. So you're able to check and challenge and chat to them about their family. How's Darren getting on? Did he win his match last Sunday? So they feel that they're in an environment that, is genuine care. And that's really important, I believe, for anybody in any walk, to set an environment where first and foremost, there's a little bit of a connection and care. And, look, Razor does that. Scott Robinson does that.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Better than anybody. And I got a chance to work with him at the Barbarians, and he came over and stayed with myself and Sarah for a little while in America. And I suppose the connection I had was, I would have been around, say, the Yale football program. And I said, look, Razor's coming in. They'd already read the book Legacy. So he came in and was talking to the lacrosse coaches and the basketball coaches and the football coaches about his environments and his philosophy around learning. And it was so different to a very prescriptive environment that you mentioned earlier on, where it's the coach telling you what to do and you do it. And look, there's certain places for that. But then you go to the other extreme in the skill acquisition model, and it's all about that autonomous learning to become smart people, good decision makers, to have that emotional connection. And that's where I think the best environments have a combination of knowing, when do I need to be prescriptive here, and when do I need to allow the employee to feel that we're listening, that we're caring for that person. And again, like going back to the point I was trying to make is, when I left the Irish job, I got trapped in social media, where you're looking at people who are maybe not experts in the field, but they're telling you how to live your life. They're telling you to get up at like 6 a.m. Like, I was looking at that dude, I can't remember what his name was, and Andy, he's a bald guy, gym lad. He's a car dealer. I can't remember his name now. But essentially, he's totally ripped, and he's talking about, if you're not ripped, like, essentially you're a failure, and you got to get up at like 4 a.m. And I was looking at this going, fuck, Jesus, it passed me by. You can get trapped down that. You start looking at everybody's best moments, and you're like, so I realized as well, I suppose during my time with the Irish team, you learn to not look at social media, because it can't be a very nice place.
It can be toxic.
But I can't remember what that guy's name is. But the point is that I think any environment, it's about accepting, like, the individual. Make sure there's an alignment somehow.
It's funny, I was listening to a guy last week. He was talking about inclusivity as a leader, right, and how to create that. And two things he said was really important is to listen and be curious. So when you're listening, to genuinely listen, and then when you're being curious, to your point, to ask them about the family, about things that are important to them. And that's not rocket science. That's just in generally being a kind of decent, engaged person. But we can kind of tend to forget about all that, because we're so focused on the goal, whatever it takes. It's important.
I was cutting off you. I was cutting you off there. Because you said something that really reminded me about something that I would have learned a lot about before coming home. When I was working with World Rugby, I had a chance again to work with some really good coaches, and you're just watching them work and you're learning from them the whole time. And like, we invest so much in leadership books and the art of leadership and how to create leadership. So you're going into a team, you're talking about leadership, but actually there's a real art to being in fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real art to being somebody who's there to support leaders and to do things to provide that support that allows the leader to perform. But it's amazing because in most companies, they're looking for everyone to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to follow is an incredibly precious, in my opinion, under-resourced, researched area. Because if you can get really good followers, they don't have to speak necessarily because they're not comfortable speaking in front of a group. They love being task-orientated and being given a task. They've got a massive role to play. They don't need to be sold like the leadership and
no.
We want you to do this. It's like, here's what we want you to do. We know you. We know that this is your personality. This is where we know you're in your happiest place. So if you can bring out the best in everybody in an organization and you have a really tight-knit group that can communicate well because they all understand their role and as I said to you, how I can best perform.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting one that I learned from observing lots of people, is how you can engage with the people who are on the periphery and make them feel special and make them feel like they're contributing. That's definitely something I think
Pat Lam did a very good piece with Connacht years ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Did you ever hear that story where he got everybody
the
in
rugby ball and
he got everybody
the handshake?
Well, no, he got everybody in into Connacht, and he had say 100 tables, and there was 10 people at a table, and all these people that were involved in Connacht, either supporters, workers, groundsmen, players, coaches, staff, nutrition. And he got them all to write down 3 values that associated with Connacht, and then from that they get paired off into 2s within the table, and those 2s agreed on 3 values, and then the table eventually agreed on 3 values. And it meant then that each table then put up their 3 values up onto the board that was agreed on, and then they kind of grouped them all together into one kind of area, which meant then that the groundskeeper knew that he was doing the grounds because that was his piece towards the values. The tickets guy, the nutrition, the bagman, from everywhere from the ground up, literally the community supporters club, what they were trying to do, all built towards the values that they had all agreed on, and ultimately went on to win the competition.
Yeah.
And like that would never been done before.
Yeah.
But it was able to give people a purpose and a reason. And it was,
but that's the emotional.
Not everybody was leading. Yeah.
Certainly in sport, that's the emotional connection, Stephen. It's being connected to a cause, a purpose, the people around you all having a shared vision.
Yeah.
And again, you can be bored looking through social media, people who are telling you this, but to actually live it and to do it correctly and to see it being done correctly is something that is incredibly precious. And that's something that I find I get in team sports and in education. You know, in my new role, being able to help teams and coaches and the school to be able to be better at rugby across the board. I mean, that's just fun.
Yeah, but
that's a dream.
100%. Yeah,
and you know,
if you can create that, instill that butterfly effect, then for the rest of their lives, for kids, because they've learned something that is, as you say, is quite precious.
Yeah.
They hopefully bring it on to the next stage of their lives.
Well, sorry, you're talking about theming a little bit, and I can talk about this for hours because, again, working with Razor, he was big into theming, and I was just sitting back and just listening to him, and, you know, I'm name dropping here, but Wayne Smith or Robbie Deans, you get to work with like the best in the world talking about theming. It came from loads of different places, but the Crusaders bought into it very early, starting with Robbie Deans and Wayne Smith, and obviously Razor playing there. So theming was a huge part. And like anything else, because they're such innovators, lots of people around the world are now theming in all walks of life. But, you know, I remember coming into the Irish job and we came up with the Project 36 was what I thought the theme would be called. I would have shared with all the AIL clubs. All the players would have got an email. And the idea would be that we're designing players that can go to 36 minutes ball and play at a high intensity, because I believe that if you can design your players to play a certain way, which is an Irish way, which I believe is really abrasive, really attritional, very fast. My goal was that every rugby club in the country, every coach in the country, everybody would understand this is our job to contribute to what's going to be a really good Irish side. So I remember institutionalizing that, or at least trying to, institutionalizing is the wrong word, but you try to bring it in as a theme. And it's something that just takes time, you know, but as it turns out, by the end of the first Six Nations, we, away to Japan in our first test, we had a game that was over 40 minutes ball and play in heat, which is incredible. So that's a sign that, you know, players have to be much more repeatable, getting up off the ground, back into position, understanding where they are, what's in front of them, who's around them, what decision can I make that's going to improve the team. That takes a huge amount of time to get to the point where you can do it at speed and with accuracy. So you can see again during last year's Six Nations, I'm sure that they would have gone in with a theme, and they would have bought into that theme, and everything would have given that the connection, that emotional connection, to drive them forward, to be a part of a purpose. And if a company can get that right, or if any sports organization can get that right, that for me is really successful, and that's a team that'll have longevity and be able to consistently perform. You might win every year, but you'll be certainly there or thereabouts every year.
Yeah, and it's like in business, it's like having that vision,
yeah,
and vision, mission, purpose, all that stuff. But like having that, but that's one thing, having it on the wall, but actually living it is totally different.
Yeah, it's
you spoke there about like going back into coaching and obviously teaching as well, right? What is your approach to teaching now that you have this kind of, you've been to Yale, you've had this kind of global experience, some positive, some not so positive. Like, has that reshaped how you will be looking to help the kids of the next generation?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a teacher for 13 years before I went to America.
Yeah.
And certainly now teaching, it's a real responsibility. I would have been a geography teacher and business studies. And for me, look, trust me, it's important. I was in St. Michael's College. They all did very well in their Leaving Cert. You had to find a way to make sure that your players, or excuse me, your students were prepared for state exams and for Christmas exams. And your job is you got to stick to a syllabus. But if you can get your students to love a subject, it's much easier to get the information out of them. It's much easier for them to study it. It's much easier for them to prepare because they get a connection, like I talked about earlier on, to a subject. So when I used to teach geography, probably my first lesson was just throwing out some facts about the world, about how fast it's currently moving, about the deepest parts of the ocean. You might even like just engage around it being all around you. Pangaea, all world, half of Ireland at one stage was south of the equator. You know, people don't realize that. And we know that because of the tropical red sandstone that's all around Munster. So part of Ireland was north of the equator, you know, and you start talking about those sort of things at the start. It's amazing then how they get into the subject and they find it quite interesting. And kids now are so much more intelligent, you know, they have everything to hand. So again, as a teacher, I'm just looking forward to going in and trying to create an environment where they're buzzing to come into the class and learn about a subject. It's something that I'm really excited about.
It's funny you say that. We were in the Aran Islands at the weekend.
Oh,
and, talk about resetting.
Yeah. But
like, there's nothing better than actually getting into, when you're doing geography or something like that, getting into it and actually seeing part of the world. Because that obviously it's a very, very different part of Ireland now than what a lot of people experience.
That'll be a real joy to try and get into the classroom. And you know, when you're re-registering through the teaching council, I've started that process, which is great because you know I've obviously been a teacher before, and you're reigniting that so you can get back into the classroom. So I'm really looking forward to doing it. And again, around my philosophy is you always have to take into account that there's times again to be prescriptive. You know, there's times where you have to do it this way. This is like in any syllabus, I believe. It's like in rugby. If you equate that to maths, I think sometimes we expect our 13-year-old rugby player to be able to solve really difficult equations, but they don't know how to add and subtract. So if you have a really good syllabus in a school that's based around like that cognitive stage where they're getting really good at their basic skills and learn through the game, it doesn't have to be too rigid. Yeah. But if they get really good skills, you can go on some really cool little journeys the older they get, because you start talking to them about what they're seeing and what they're feeling and how could you have done that better? What did you notice about the backfield? You know, how was your carry? And when you've gone through that cognitive stage, it's the same in any subject in school. If you get through that stage of learning how it works, you can then do some great things.
Yeah, I was the complete opposite when I was there.
I was terrible.
I was studying just to kind of just get through it.
Yeah, I was the same. I was terrible.
The Maynooth University brought in a piece called critical thinking into one of their into their modules, and it's brilliant because it helps kids who are coming out of school from a lot of the time when they're told what to think, and now to evaluate and to critically analyze what the question is or what the problem is. That probably should be brought in a little bit earlier, so that kids, to your point, when they do get that eureka moment that they've figured it out, that they're asking the right questions then, you know, and that they're free to ask those questions, you know.
Look, I think everything evolves, you know, education and leadership and setting company connections and everything. That's a big buzz at the moment. You know, people are all looking for the answer to this. But at the same time, we've always found a way.
Yeah.
You know, and as I said to you, let's not overemphasize what we can do as a teacher. At the end of the day, is like it's down to the student and their ability to be smart enough to take on the information, to learn it, to do well. But if you can just give them a good environment that they're looking forward to coming to school, I think that's really important. Or looking forward to going training, or looking forward to going to work.
Yeah, you're dead. Like, I do think certain if a teacher cares, I think that comes through big time. Where it's like when you see doctors and sometimes they've been through it for so long that they lose that empathy and that emotion of it. So I think having that ability to care will give reasons for the kids then to want to come back as well.
Oh, look, again, hopefully there's going to be days when, you know, they won't want to fucking see me, you know, but that's the thing is you go into a class and, you know, you're not going to please everybody, I'm sure, but you just want to make sure that there's a syllabus, you stick to it, you make sure that they're listening as best they can.
Yeah.
And just trying to get them to love a subject. And other than that, you got to be prepared. And that's the thing, you know, I'm reading business books and I'm reading geography books I haven't taught in a good few years, and you're just trying to get up to speed and you're putting together your notes.
There's a great book called is it the Art of Geography? Is it, or oh my God,
you're putting me on the spot.
My cousin Hillary, she sent it, but basically gave you the history of the world and all the different battles and challenges that were going on in different countries. Oh my God, I can't remember it, but if I remember it, I'll send it on to you.
It's definitely one of those subjects.
Prisoners of Geography, is that it?
It might be.
It's I read it a number of years ago. Fascinating book.
Yeah.
But let's talk about All Walks.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about the pod. So how did that come about and why?
So again, I'd finished with my last role. I was doing a bit of work for World Rugby. I was with my kids and my wife down at the beach near where we live, and I bumped into an American fella. Our kids were playing with each other, and he ended up turned into a very good friend and a business partner. He was Mike Sugru, who is the founder and owner of Mayrose Futures, who are based in San Francisco, but are also based in Dublin and in London. So they're around production, TV production, and lots of stuff that'll be on Netflix and TV in America and ads and everything else. And it was like, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah. So we just started doing it, not knowing what we're doing. But again, it's similar to what I was talking about earlier on as a teacher. You want to bring somebody on, similar to what you're doing, and just be able to have a chat and talk through how everything is with them. I find that really interesting. And then, you know, you start looking at people like, for me, it'd be Michael Parkinson's, where you're looking at old Parkinson tapes and you're trying to find out his body language, you know, the respect that he gives people who come on. Because it's always about the guests, you know, and that's the one thing, you know, we're both going in there really raw, but we're trying to learn as fast as we can. And it's gone really well because we've had some really great guests on who tell a really compelling story. And I think people enjoy listening to those stories. Yeah,
I think what I've found as well is when people see something in them, in the guests, you know, there's an affinity there.
Yeah.
They can see that person's just like me, just trying their best, doing their bit. And we've had some incredible guests coming on who've severed their spinal cords and given a 5% chance to walk, and then the year later they're walking from Athenry to National Rehabilitation Hospital. And they're people like us, but just get dealt a different blow.
Yeah,
other people with addiction and how they've come through it, and it is fascinating that these people are literally like a phone call or a text message away.
Yeah, I mean, they're great.
Some people are happy to tell their story, but they're sometimes surprised that you want to listen to it because they're so focused on kind of figuring out their own lives, you know.
It's amazing. Like some people come in and just you're across the mic, you're talking to them, and you're just trying to take it in, because I know every interviewer or interviewee, like I'm sure you have your own style of how you go about a conversation. And I'm certainly trying to develop that style, because again, like we talk about, these people have some great things to say, but sometimes they'll say something and you have to think for a while and just take everything in that they've said. You can't even say anything because they've thrown in a complete, not a wobbler, but they've thrown in like a point that is pretty hard hitting, and they've got these amazing stories. You only realize half of it when they begin to talk to you.
Yeah.
I find it just amazing. I've learned so much from them, so much. Like whether we have somebody who owns a restaurant, or you have somebody who's a singer, or somebody who's gone through addiction, like you talked about, they all have really interesting things to say, and they all have learnings for us. Like I'm listening to people, and I'm taking on board so much of what they say, like into my own life.
100%.
And that's I love that. Like I love, I'm very open about it. I love talking to people. I like engaging with people. So to be able to do it and to bring out the best in others, that's just deadly.
So tell me this in terms of, so say you had, I always ask this question, and I think it's an interesting one. Just have a think about it. So every time I ask somebody to come on the pod, I ask them to imagine that they're driving past a billboard or a 48 sheet, which is like your big sign on the street, right? And you kind of get 3 seconds to kind of take in the message. But considering what you've learned and what you've kind of been through, and considering the kind of the outlook in life, if you were to leave a message, if there was one message that you were kind of keen to pass on to your kids, or to somebody passing by and who sees that sign, what would that message say?
Oh God, you're going to hate me for this, but like I'm not trying to talk myself down, but it's hard to be able to, give 3 good messages, there's so much more still to go. I still feel that I was the best actually in my last role. It just didn't work out. And there was things I do differently, but I'd worked really hard to get to that point, and I'm looking for the next thing to do. It's hard to know now. I mean, if you've said like now at this stage, I'm sorry for being so complicated.
Don't be. It's a tricky one. You see, it is a tough one. But
I suppose engaging will be pretty important to me, because I think it's important to know that like that's a really important thing for me. It's something that at the worst of times I'd struggle with. I think everybody struggles that. You go through moments where you lose your spark, or your willingness to go out and meet somebody for pints, or you get a text message and you just can't deal with it, or a phone call. So you have to be always aware of staying engaged, and it's something that I definitely learned that it's something I have to get better at, because, you go through stages where you're not connecting with people. That's really important, I think, in anyone's life. And they did a study in Harvard over the course of, I don't know how many years, they tracked people's lives all the way through from graduating Harvard all the way through to their last moments. And when it came down to it, the one thing that they all discussed as a main element in their life was the connection piece.
It's funny you say that, because you started off talking about the fact that you love people and that you love being with people and that, but then you found it tough to engage with people following a certain, or during a certain time. Yeah,
because your head's just not in the space. Like sometimes you need to recalibrate, and take a bit of time, and you have to always, I think, like at the end of every season, you always have to try and look at what you're doing and try and do it better.
Yeah, it gives you a chance to protect yourself, doesn't it? And kind of nearly reinforce yourself for the next round or whatever's coming down.
Yeah, I think so. And then you're just looking for the right opportunity at the right time.
Yeah.
And as I said to you, after my last role, it takes a while to get the right opportunity, and that puts more pressure on a family, because as I said at the start, things that are important to me is that love and support and security for your family. So you got to provide as well. So you go through a stage where you weren't providing as well as you'd like to, because you're transitioning out of being an international rugby coach. Effectively, your career is, in my opinion, your career essentially is like done. So I wouldn't apply for jobs. You know, jobs come up, I wouldn't apply for coaching roles because in my head, my coaching career was over.
And would you have thought that about somebody else if they were in your position?
I don't know. Like everyone's different.
You've seen
everyone's
coaches
different.
lose their jobs, right, in the past.
Yeah.
But did you ever think that their career was over, or?
Look,
you know,
there's loads of ways of looking at it, and like everyone I talk to, if I mention that story, of course they come back with, "Will you stop? You know, that's part of coaching. You lose your job, you gain a job." That wasn't the issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
The issue was just the feeling of I don't want to say regret, but I went into that job really believing that we were going to turn it around, and it's hard because then when it doesn't work out. You know, I was there for 12 games and we didn't turn around the 12 games, but I believed we established some really good frameworks that hopefully will improve the group moving forward. When that happens at the biggest stage, and you've been grinding for 26 years, sometimes coaching 3 teams a year to try and get better at coaching, to get opportunities, to get to a point where you were coaching a national side. So I said, assistant coach in the male side, went to the World Cup in 2019. I was at USA for 3 years, amazing 3 years. I mean, everything was great, thank God. Beat Scotland, you know, won the Grand Slam. That was all great. But then to coach your own country is something I think that every Irish person would do. And it's just, I just didn't perceive that that's how it would finish, because I did lose my love for it then.
Did you? Yeah.
And, you know, I got offered a really good job overseas in Japan. And, you know, at that time, that's a big shift because you're packing up your wife and kids again. And then I get a call from a championship team in the UK. And you're like, am I really going to commute from Dublin? My family's staying here. And you're not, it's not like you're earning money, you know, like I have a brother who always says it very well to me. He goes, look, when you're a school teacher and when you're a rugby coach, you do a huge amount of hours. You don't get a huge amount back. And you either, I suppose, substitute your family time for high economic gain, or you have a huge amount of family time and you commit to the fact that you won't have a huge amount of economic gain. But to try and be in the middle where you don't have a lot of economic gain, you're not spending the time with your family, doesn't make sense. And I went through maybe 15 years of that, where I look back now and I think at times I was away from you know, Sarah, Lana Rose and Archie, and I had a wife who was like, let me do that because she knew that that's what got me up in the morning. I was really passionate about it. Incredible support.
Yeah.
And then you get to the stage where all of that, the crescendo is like your biggest failure. And I really struggled with that for a while. I'm definitely gotten to the point that I'm over it. Like, I was supporting them in the Six Nations. I want them to do well because I've met the new coach, Scott. He looked after me when I came in, and we played England away in a game and it didn't go well. And we actually played really well that day. But again, England are just so far ahead at the moment. And that's the thing that people don't realize, how far ahead France are in the women's game, or even Wales now, because of essentially the whole Welsh team play down in the Premiership in England, which is the best league in the world, even though I'm sure the AIL wouldn't like you to say that. But it's where all the best players go to. Mm-hmm. So all the Scottish players, all the Welsh players, all the English players, they all play, and all the Italy players all play in that league. So I know I'm going off on one here, but it goes back to that point, which is I just wanted them to succeed. I'd watched them. I'd left them when we beat New Zealand in 2019 at the World Cup. I went to America the following week, and I'd look from afar into how the Irish team was going. And I always say, Jesus, they deserve better. They deserve better from being in there and knowing them. And you come back and you get a chance, right, here you go. Then you think you can make it better, off you go. And it doesn't as fast as you'd like. That's really hard.
How would you say you deal with failure then? If you call it that.
I still don't know yet, because I've always dealt with it really well, I think. You know, I've lost jobs before. You know, as a coach, you lose a job, and when you do, you feel terrible, and then everyone says to you, now you're a real coach. You know, you've lost your job.
Yeah.
So that's okay, and I'm okay with how you're perceived externally now. I mean, that's something when, you know, maybe when you're in the role for the first time, you pick up the first article and you see your name, you're like, geez, what's this about? And then you realize, okay, I can't look at that. So I wouldn't look at that. And I suppose failure now, I don't know. I personally think that the biggest failure you can have, I'm not pretending that I'm practicing what I want to preach, but I think the biggest failure you can have is if you're not trying to get better every day, if you're not trying to learn from your errors, if you're not trying to be better or at least the same. You know, there are moments after, as I said to you, where I struggle to get out of bed sometimes. You know, your energy would be down, you'd be just low, you'd be upset. I mean, that's not.
Do you think you went through a bit of a depression piece, or do you think it was? Do you think it was more of just feeling just disappointed and sad?
Yeah, I'm probably terrible to, you know, I enjoy being where you are. I don't enjoy necessarily being where I am, because for me, I wouldn't put a label on it, because it's just part of the ups and downs in life. I mean, you go through moments where things are going shit and it's just not working out. But as long as you're trying to at least make it better, I think you've always got a chance. And for me, it just took a while to realize I've actually got to work on making things better. It's not going to come to me. I'm not going to all of a sudden wake up and everything's going to be fine. You had to get back to work. You had to make sure that you're giving yourself the best opportunity.
Yeah.
And in doing that, then you realize, geez, I'd love to go back to school teaching. You know, is chasing the professional rugby coach what I really want? And it's not. But I would love to support people who want that. I'd love to help people get to that level because I've been there. You know, and I think there was probably maybe I had notions, I don't know, but I was looking at going into the private sector and doing what I do in sport in the private sector, but just nothing really materialized. And then you realize, okay, well, things happen for a reason. So
it's important to know what you don't want, though. That's nearly more important than trying to figure out what you do want, because there could be loads of different avenues to go down. But when you know what you don't want, then that can give you a sense of purpose and a focus.
Yeah, it really does. You know, it really does, because I think now I'd be really good at being an assistant coach, because I don't want to be the head coach. I don't want to be.
Well, look at Stuart Lancaster.
You know, I don't want to be a head coach, and that's nice, because then if people know that, and I go in to help them, like I'm going to do in St Andrews in August, I can't wait for that. Is they know that I'm there to support them. I don't want their job. You know, I don't want to be the head coach. I want to be there just to give them the best opportunity to. Whatever you want, I'm here, and whatever I can do to help, I'm here.
And that goes back to your fellowship piece as well, because there's a skill. There's a skill to that.
Yeah, it takes a while. It's a lot. It takes lots of errors, lots of mistakes. Actually, one great bit of advice I did get off Fraser, is he said something really bluntly to me about something that I did when we were coaching together. Something that I said and something that I did. And I remember at the time literally not being able to speak. He said straight to my face, and I was like, oh my God, how do I deal with this? You know, I really struggle with being told something that was just straight to the point. And then you have time just to kind of digest that and have a shower. I essentially repeated, I think, something he said, and I was kind of maybe on the coattails of what he was saying, and then changing it to, I could be wrong, but I think that was it. And I remember thinking then, after I was having a shower, fuck, thank God I got that piece of advice. You know, that was the best piece of advice I could have got. But the way that he was able to deliver it so clinically, I remember thinking, I'm going to learn from that.
And did he deliver it in a way as like, don't ever fucking do that again?
Not at all. No. It wasn't like that. He just said it. You know, where sometimes you work with people and you don't say it's too much of an issue. He was just straight in there saying it. So you knew what you were getting from Scott. Would always be honest. If he wasn't happy with something, he'd tell you. But if you were like, hey, look, is that okay? And you're like, yeah, mate, that was perfect. You knew it was perfect.
Yeah.
Or you knew it was good.
Yeah.
But if you said, hey, was that okay? Like, because I didn't know. He go, no, that was all wrong, man. He goes, like, next time you do that, you can't just talk to 3 people and not engage with the other 9, or whatever it might be. I'm making these examples.
I know, yeah.
But it was just a real, that for me was really good, because, you know, when you are working with an international side and you're going to a World Cup, we went to Japan with USA, and you've got a big squad and you're selecting it down to, at the time, 31 that are going to Japan, and you're essentially overseeing the back line in terms of selection. Now, the head coach, Gary, great to work with, would have the final say. Myself and Jacques Ferry, who was the defence coach, we'd select our players and we'd go to Gary, and once we're all happy, then we'd have to deliver to the players that, you know, an American who's waited his whole life to compete in the world stage, and you're saying, sorry, you're not going to the World Cup. Because of the interactions I had definitely with Razor, I was able to just cut through it and say, look, here's the reason why you're not going to the World Cup, and you got to be better at that. And that's my point about experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I was the SET coach in Michaels, I'm sure I said to somebody, hey, listen, if you work harder, you know, you could get on the team there. And I said to the same person, same position, if you work harder, you know.
Yeah.
So
give them
experience,
feedback, be direct, and
redirect the feedback.
Honesty is the only way for people to really build.
Yeah, but long term, I think what that does do when you do it well, I'm not saying you get it right all the time. You certainly go in there and be as direct as you can, is the respect that does come back to you. It might be slow and they might be emotionally upset if you give them bad news, and they're getting terrible news. They've tried so hard for this. Or even you're at the World Cup and you're telling somebody for the third game they're not getting into the match day 23.
Yeah.
And their family have flown over from America to Japan to watch them play in a rugby cup, and they're not getting any minutes. You know, like they're the things you have to take into consideration. So
it was funny because when you say that, I played Irish 19s and I would have gotten that exact type of advice or exact type of feedback. Next one, and it would never happen. And it's heartbreaking as a kid as well, especially when you're trying so hard. But
it's a superpower. Like I always say you have a superpower, and that is what you develop your game to be good at. So whatever you're good at, do it most often. So if you're a really good carrier, let's just find a way that Stephen is carrying as often as he can.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have areas around that you have to work on. So you have the technical and tactical part of your game that you'll have to work on like everybody else.
Yeah.
You'll have the physical side that you have to work in your fitness. But most importantly, man, it's saying to them, look, unfortunately, your carrying is not good enough. Mm-hmm. You're not making enough yards after contact. You got to do a lot of work on your footwork. You got a lot of work in your ball placement. You know, you've lost 3 balls in the last 36 minutes that you've played, and that's too much for us. We can't risk you going to the World Cup. So you're going to go back to your club. You're going to work on that. And when you do that better, you'll have a better chance of being selected. You know, that's where you want to get to with the conversations. And you got video to certainly. What we would do with Gary was then you'd have clips. They go through like, here's what you've done well, here's what you need to improve on. So they're really clear and they're aligned. And because I think sometimes with selection you have to take the emotion out of it, because that's going to come anyway. You've got to separate the process and the emotion of everything as often as you can to be analytical. And again, that's what experience is. Like Gary was so analytical, so I learned so much from him around that. You know,
you've been through a lot of learning especially in the last 12 months or so, but over the last number of years, the amount of stuff that you've learned and that you've applied then to your own life and then obviously teaching the kids as well as they're growing up, you know, like there's a lot of really, really good news stories out of it in terms of the future looks bright, especially like you seem happier and you seem happy about what's coming down. And I think that's class.
I think, honestly, I'd like to think again, it's probably why I'm not a great guest. I never was at the.
Would you stop self-deprecating?
No, but I'm saying I'm generally. I'd never felt I was in a position where I was like depressed or I wasn't good. I think I've always been in good form. But you have moments where, when you're reflecting on what you've done, it's a struggle when you realize sometimes you got to trust your gut and you should have done it a different way. That's my biggest regret, is I can look at things straight away that I should have done it at that moment and I didn't. And if I did at that moment, things I believe would have been better. Mm-hmm. And you might have doubted yourself, or you might have been dealing with somebody who had a very good way of selling what they thought should have happened, whether it was in selection or captaincy or leadership or whatever it is, and you get bought into that. And so I you know, it's not whether you're going through a tough time or depressed. It's a case of just being reflective, like just saying, shit, I could have done better there. That's hard, because sometimes in roles, and again, it's another old cliche, if you do the best you can do, and I've been there with a group of players and you lose in the first round of a cup game, I mean, you can live with that.
Of course.
And they can live with that. Look
in the mirror.
You know, they've been really proud, they've competed, they've lost, but like they didn't think they could perform like that. Like that's great. Yeah. But when you go out in the first round where you've underperformed, that's always hard to deal with. Yeah, it's hard.
So let's if anybody wanted to reach out and get in touch or to listen to the
All Walks podcast. Yeah, it's gone, as I said, it's gone really well. You know, what started off as a bit of a hobby now has turned to something that has gone well. People seem to enjoy it. We got good guests on, and Mike Sugru, who I mentioned from Mayro's Future, he does an unbelievable job of putting together great camera work and just look at all walks on social media.
I think it's brilliant, and I wish you all the best with it. I wish you the best with the teaching as well.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it.
Like, listen, I'll put all the notes and all the bits in the show notes, but like, it's been lovely to catch up with you. It's been lovely just to sit down and have a chat. Well, we better get that in because or around the 9 holes. But it's been really nice to chat and to sit down with you and to just get a sense of where you're at, because I think what you've done has been brilliant. I think you can hold your head up high, and how you've approached things, how you've conducted yourself. I think how you've maintained that kind of focus and positive outlook, I think, has been brilliant. And that was one of the key reasons that I wanted to get you on, because there's a lot to learn from that. And I think the future, like whatever's going to happen now in the next around the corner between the podcast and teaching and back into coaching again, it's going to be great.
We'll see. Yeah, again, I like a lot of work to do, and I'm looking forward to trying to get better at doing it. So just roll on.
Good man.
Roll on.
Greg McWilliams, thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Good to see you, pal.